Wendy Clark. Heidi DeWinger.
Here.
Kylie Goslin.
Here.
Tim Hodges. Kathy McKinnon.
Here.
Salem Mascara Bruno.
Here.
George Perez.
Here.
Franklin Perry. Sarah Sanders.
Here.
Lisa Tepper Bates.
Here.
Glenn Thames. And Greg Ugaldi will not be present today. You do have a quorum.
Tim Hodges just joined as well.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 10:02, and the first item on the agenda is public comment. Shelley, could you proceed with the process of
Sure.
public comments, please?
This will be the only opportunity on the agenda for public comments. If you'd like to provide a comment, please unmute yourself and state your name. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. There are 2 people who signed up ahead of time. Aaron Boggs, are you on the line?
Hello, my name is Roger Maldonado. I'm a staff attorney at the Open Communities Alliance, and I will be testifying on Aaron's behalf. Good morning, members of the board.
Good morning.
Morning.
So you can go ahead, Greg.
And I am also online. Kathy Austin,
Okay.
State Senator.
And also Erin Kemple from the Connecticut Fair Housing Center.
Okay, so we'll go with Greg, the senator, and then Aaron.
Great. Good morning, members of the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority Board. My name is Roger Maldonado. I'm a staff attorney at the Open Communities Alliance. I will be offering testimony in support of the proposed opportunity points in CHFA's qualified allocation plan for the LIHTC program. I submitted fuller comments electronically, to which I respectfully refer the board. As the board is aware, OCA presented along with CHFA and the Department of Housing at the Partnership for Strong Communities Tipping Point Conference in November 2020. At that conference, we discussed our opportunity mapping that has now been incorporated into the proposed opportunity point system. The opportunity points in CHFA's QAP have always been proposed and adopted via an open and public process. Unfortunately, both historically and to this day, LIHTC investment in Connecticut has largely functioned to further concentrate poverty and limit locational choices for lower income families. This reflects the program's prioritization of various factors other than opportunity points that favor developments in areas that already have disproportionately high poverty rates, are lower opportunity, and are densely developed. OCA, of course, agrees that it is critical to invest in these communities, but any government subsidized housing allocations must be part of a broader strategy that includes both fostering equitable community-driven revitalization in lower opportunity areas without further concentrating poverty and increasing access to affordable housing in low poverty, higher opportunity areas. OCA respectfully submits that to date, this balance has never been struck. If a meaningful portion of LIHTC development occurred in higher opportunity areas in a manner that avoided poverty concentration, it would both provide greater economic mobility for low-income families that may wish to relocate and avoid adversely affecting the communities in which they are located. Critically, greater geographic diversity in the location of LIHTC developments would foster increased racial and ethnic diversity across Connecticut. The proposed updated opportunity points for the QAP represent an initial step toward rectifying the enduring imbalance in LIHTC investments in Connecticut. The more complete solution for which OCA has long advocated is to divide the credits into buckets based on opportunity mapping, allocating a portion to higher opportunity communities and a portion to the remainder of the state, since the unfortunate reality is that LIHTC proposals in higher opportunity areas remain at a severe disadvantage. Given that OCA's recommendation of creating such buckets has never been adopted, it is essential that opportunity points remain a key element of the QAP. In fact, short of creating the buckets, OCA advocates placing an even greater emphasis on opportunity points to help level the playing field for proposals in low poverty areas with the potential to foster racial integration and economic mobility. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment this morning. And again, I refer the board to my comments submitted via email. Thank you.
Thank you. I was on mute. Senator Austin?
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. As I spoke last month, I continue with in Eastern Connecticut. We have some delegation has submitted a letter to the board and to all the required people to make sure that everybody received the letter, as we heard last time that people did not have a chance to understand what we were saying. Eastern Connecticut believes that these modifications, while CHFA purports that there are no significant changes, will directly and dramatically impact Eastern Connecticut. We still oppose the changes to these maps, and we hope that you're not going to implement these changes. We believe that there's a complete disconnect between this policy and Eastern Connecticut, when all 3 counties in Eastern Connecticut, fully a third of the state, will be negatively impacted by the changes to this map. I do appreciate the commissioner and the executive director of CHFA meeting with us, but we are not convinced that these changes will not have an unnecessary, dramatically negative impact on Eastern Connecticut. When we are trying desperately to diversify, and without the ability to have housing credits such as this, we feel that we will not see the necessary changes. We did hear the request by the board that that Eastern Connecticut work on its infrastructure and public transportation. For me, this is a chicken and the egg situation. Unless we have the higher proportionate number of people move to the area, we don't have the dollars necessary to support public transportation as robustly as it should be. And quite frankly, infrastructure changes like water and sewer used to be paid for 100% by the federal government. We're hoping to see some changes when the Biden administration passes the infrastructure plan, but you cannot expect a small town of less than 5,000 people to support an infrastructure amount of about $10 million to effectuate good sewer and water. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak before you today. And again, the Eastern Connecticut delegation on a bipartisan basis is opposed to the changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Austin. Erin Campbell.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the Board of Directors today. I would like to present my comments in favor of the qualified action plan that has been proposed, and in particular, will speak to the opportunity mapping that is included in that. As you all know, Connecticut is highly segregated based on race and national origin. In fact, 68% of Connecticut's people of color live in only 8% of Connecticut's land. And while there are many reasons for the extreme segregation, one significant factor is the placement of subsidized and affordable housing, such as that we are discussing today. Low-income people of color rent their homes at 3 times the rate of whites, and as a result, placing subsidized and affordable housing in just a few urban areas has increased segregation, not only in Connecticut, but across the country. In an effort to promote segregation and reverse years of policies that resulted in segregation at both the federal, state, and local level, the 1968 Fair Housing Act requires communities to affirmatively further fair housing. Affirmatively furthering fair housing means that entities such as CHFA and the Department of Housing must take meaningful actions to overcome patterns of segregation and foster inclusive communities. By including opportunity mapping in the proposed QAP, CHFA and DOH have made a commitment to affirmatively furthering fair housing, which we applaud. The current opportunity map uses social science research to rate census tracts based upon their access to high quality education and employment, as well as public safety. In addition to promoting integration, these ingredients are shown to ensure future success in life. By including opportunity points in the QAP, CHFA and DOH have taken an initial step in fostering inclusive communities and overcoming these patterns of segregation. However, the current QAP does not rely solely on opportunity points when determining who is awarded low-income housing tax credits. In fact, the QAP evaluates applications on 26 different criteria when awarding a total of 100 points. Opportunity points are just 9% of the total, and based upon the scoring criteria, it is unlikely that opportunity points will result in the disqualification of any applicant. I'm sure it will come as no surprise that the center would prefer that opportunity points played a bigger role in the QAP, but they do not. Some of the opposition to the current QAP includes arguments that opportunity points combined with points relating to infrastructure will result in large portions of Eastern Connecticut losing out on LIHTC developments and a decrease in economic revitalization. This argument has two fundamental flaws. First, the QAP gives the highest number of points for affordability and financial efficiency. Scoring high on the components of both categories will outweigh the points awarded for infrastructure or opportunity. And second, the QAP is designed to develop affordable housing, not to ensure economic development. While economic development often accompanies housing development, the goal of the QAP is to create affordable housing. And finally, with regards to the allegation that there was a lack of transparency in the adoption of the current opportunity map and the change from town-based mapping to census tract mapping. In fact, the public had numerous opportunities to learn about and comment on the opportunity map. The Fair Housing Center and the OCA presented information about the new opportunity map at a statewide housing conference in October of 2020. Following that, CHFA gave the public 30 days to comment on the QAP and the use of the opportunity map. And a public hearing was held on the opportunity map and the QAP. In addition, the change from town-based mapping to census tract mapping was necessary to ensure that race-based and economic segregation do not continue. There are different opportunity ratings in different municipalities because not every census tract includes the same access to the tools needed to be successful. One census tract may have access to jobs, high-performing schools, and transportation, while another census tract in the same community less than a mile away has high crime rates, failing schools, and a lack of access to opportunity. I appreciate the efforts of the staff of CHFA and DOH in putting together the QAP, and I urge its passage. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Erin. Shelley?
Any other comments? Public comment period has ended, and I'll turn the meeting back over to the commissioner.
Thank you, Shelley. Next on the agenda is the report of the CEO, Nandini.
Hey, Commissioner, I'm sorry to interrupt, but clearly there's someone talking in the background. Is there any way to mute because it's kind of tough to hear, at least for me?
If you're not talking, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you, Tim. So Nandini, you can unmute yourself.
I did, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. July is traditionally a vacation month, but this July has been very different. I've been very heartened by the hard work that CHFA team has been doing. Not only do we have regular deal work, but we've had to really respond to a number of COVID-related directly or indirectly issues from partners and deals and other issues that we've had to resolve. And so we've been very busy in terms of the strategic planning. We've made some progress in various areas. We've convened working groups. The work is progressing, and there is a update in this month's board report. I'm happy to answer any questions. The Housing Assistance Fund, if you recall, is the funding from the federal government related to emergency mortgage assistance. We rolled out a pilot program on the 1st of July with 10% of the funds from Treasury, and intended to really be a way for CHFA to get a small amount of funding out quickly for those in urgent need and to use it as a learning experience for the larger program. To date, there has not been guidance from Treasury that they have indicated is forthcoming on the design of the new program. However, we have convened a steering committee internally, and we are working on the program design along with DOH. The pilot uses our current servicer network. We have currently 3 servicers who have opted to participate in the program, and we are processing a couple of 100 applications that have come in. Currently, we are planning on extending the pilot to allow for more participation in the program and potentially a few more servicers to participate. So we currently are waiting Treasury to give us the guidance that they've promised us, and when we have it, we'll be able to nail down the 90% program that will be what Treasury has to then approve, and then that program can go live sometime this fall, hopefully. With that, I will pass it back to the Commissioner and ask if there are any questions.
Any questions for Nandini or comments? Okay. Nandini, are you going to present the Office of State Ethics?
Sure. So annually, the Nancy Nicolescu comes before our board, and she's the Director of Communication and Education at the Office of State Ethics, and does an annual refresher for board members of their ethics responsibilities. And so we've asked Nancy to come and do that again this year. So I'm going to pass it off to Nancy now. Nancy, if you're on, if you can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the board for inviting me today. As you know, it gives me great pleasure to provide you with this presentation that I believe will no doubt guide you in your role as a distinguished public official and member of the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. I do know that there's some new members since the last time I presented to the board. So I'd like to welcome those new members and congratulate them on their appointment. It is certainly always worth noting that the agencies that make a point of having a little ethics refresher training rarely make headlines. And so I'm hopeful that I will give you a brief presentation that will cover quite a bit of information, a little bit about our agency. For those of you that are new to us, we were created in '77 after Watergate and recreated in 2005 as part of the sweeping government reforms that occurred after the state of Connecticut had a governor that was embroiled in corruption and scandal. We also have a board. They're a 9-member board, the Citizens Ethics Advisory Board. They are appointed to the board. They hold monthly open meetings. And as an agency, CHFA is a quasi-public agency. For us, we are part of the executive branch, but we are a civil enforcement agency, and also we're considered to be a watchdog agency. We don't report to the governor's office or OPM or the Department of Administrative Services. I mean, we certainly work with those agencies, but we oversee all state agencies and quasi-publics. And so the most important thing you need to know about the Office of State Ethics is that even though we're a watchdog, we're not a gotcha agency. We really do want to help you get it right. Like I said, we were created in '77, so we have a number of years of advice and advisory opinions. So there's a lot of detail there. I believe that as public officials and state employees, we get up every day, go to work, want to do the best possible job that we can. What's important for us is to know what the limits are and how they apply to us. I did in the chat, I did put in a web page for public officials and state employees, and this is really you don't need to open it now, but maybe you might want to save it for later. This is for the members of the board. I also included our top 10 rules handout, which is our little business card that many of you probably have, and the CHFA ethics policy. So as I go through some of the rules today, you need to know that your ethic, I am going to be talking about the codes of ethics in general, but that every state agency also has their own ethics policy, and it can be more restrictive. And in your case, I do know that there are some conflict of interest provisions that are above what the codes of ethics may require, and some guidance there. And so you should familiarize yourself with that document. What did I want to say to you today? So I'm going to go over the top 10 rules very quickly, because I always feel like I don't want to skip on anything because it's so important. All of it's so important. But the first rule, the most important rule, is to always get advice. And we cannot stress this enough. You can get advice from your ethics liaison, which is Teresa Calderon. And she's not a mandatory reporter for purposes of the code. If you don't want to speak to Teresa, our top 10 rules handout has our phone number. You can always contact our legal division for advice. Our attorneys are there to serve you, whether you're calling about a gift or use of state position or a potential conflict of interest. Perhaps you need that advice before you move forward. Definitely check in with our attorneys. They're more than happy to get that back to you. And it covers you. It covers you before you actually do something that would involve an ethics violation. And also know that our legal division has a firewall. So if in fact you did have a conflict and you acted and you weren't supposed to, they're prohibited by state statute from going over to the enforcement division and saying, guess who I just got off the phone with. So absolutely get advice whenever you can, whenever you have a question. So before I get into some of the components that would apply to you, you really need to know who's covered by the code. So not only public officials and state employees are covered, but lobbyists and contractors are covered. And you deal with lobbyists and contractors on a day-to-day basis in your work for CHFA. And so they are what we consider restricted donors, and they have a very specific set of rules in terms of how they can interface with you as a public official. And so those rules, the first place that those rules come into place is with gifts. I mean, in general, as public officials, you should not be accepting gifts from lobbyists or anyone that is regulated by or doing business with CHFA or seeking to do business with CHFA. And in the gift provisions, there are 19 gift exceptions. I'm not going to go over all of the gift exceptions, but they're token items you can accept as long as they're not worth more than $10. You don't accept more than $50 per year. You can accept food and beverage from a restricted donor as long as it's not more than $50 per year. And they're in attendance when they're, buying that dinner for you. Those are just some examples of some of the gift exceptions. And like I said, there's 19. If you receive a gift that you believe is prohibited, and how do you know when a gift is prohibited? You like it, you want to keep it, you want to put it somewhere where, so if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And the rules say to refuse, return, or pay for it. And if you need assistance figuring out what fair market value is for the gift that you received, our legal division can help you with that. The other section that I'd like to cover is use of state position. And this is really the conflicts of interest provisions. And the whole point of the Code of Ethics is to ensure that you do not use your position for financial gain, to put money in your pocket. You cannot use your position to put money in your pocket, your family's pocket, or a business with which you're associated. So if you have a conflict of interest, the law requires that you abstain or recuse yourself from acting. I also know that CHFA has the provisions on appearances with conflicts of interest. And again, that's in the ethics policy. So, and I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I promised that that in my regular trainings, I could talk for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, but I'm only taking about 20 minutes of your time today. So it is really the brief version. As a board member, you also need to understand that if you're presenting, if you're speaking, if you're asked to attend an event, a restricted donor could pay for you to attend those events and provide you with what's necessary, food and beverage, lodging, those types of things. They cannot pay you a fee or an honoraria for speaking. If you are planning on attending something that's going to be paid for by a lobbyist or a contractor or someone that's seeking to do business with your agency, to talk to Teresa Calderon or again, get advice from us. What else did I want to tell you? I think I wanted to spend a minute. I'm not going to get into other employment, but I did want to spend a minute on legislative updates. We did have some legislation that passed this year, and in Public Act 21-164, statements of financial interest will now be required to be filed electronically. We will no longer accept paper filings. Of course, we will continue to accept if you have attachments to your filing, like securities and things of that nature, we'll continue to accept those and attach them to your electronic filing. I have to commend the board and the agency for not only timely filing all of their filings last year, but also electronically. But I just wanted to, that was a recent change. In Public Act 21-164, there was also a change to a notice on donations. In the past, if a lobbyist provided you with a gift that was valued at more than $10, they needed to provide you a notice of that gift. We called it the 10-day letter. In the legislation this year, there was clarification that contractors also needed to comply with that same provision. So if a contractor were to give you a gift exceeding $10, they would have to send you that same letter to you and to your agency head. So that was in Public Act 21-164. In 21-76, we had an amendment that was the modernization bill, the governor's bill, and there is an amendment to the contracting affidavits that I'm sure you're aware of that would include that contractors acknowledge ethics, the codes of ethics, and that they have to comply with the rules as a contractor. So those were some of the legislative changes that I thought you would be interested in. And if you have any questions about that, I'm certainly happy to answer anything there for you. No? Okay. So I leave you with this. I'm just going to kind of end, and you know that we're here. You know that the laws don't change that often, thank God. And you have all of the materials before you. I'm always available to answer questions. Our legal division is always available. I did want to spend a minute on enforcement. So when there are violations of the codes of ethics, we know that an ethics violation can impact your career. And so the way that our statutes are written is that you can file a complaint with our agency anonymously or in writing. So whether you're filing the complaint or a complaint is filed against you, strict confidentiality provisions apply. Complaints that are filed with our agency are confidential throughout the investigation and the evaluation of that complaint. If the complaint is dismissed, it also remains confidential. The only time that an ethics complaint would become public is if a judge, trial, referee makes a probable cause determination. If that occurs, then the complaint would be public. The other component that would bring it to public light is if you entered into an agreement, into a consent agreement or stipulation with our agency, then it would become public and it would be posted on our website. If you do violate the codes of ethics, our board could order you to comply with the code in the future, have you pay any civil penalties of up to $10,000 per violation, and they can also compel you to complete any disclosures or filings, such as your CHFA. So that's a little bit about enforcement. If it's criminal, if it's bribery, larceny, one of those, a felony, generally those are referred to the chief state's attorney's office for their action. I'm happy to take any questions. I hope this served as a proper reminder to be aware of the codes of ethics and that you are subject to them. And I thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you, Nancy, for that. Any questions for Nancy? Well, I guess everybody has the information. If they have any questions, Nancy, they will reach out to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on with our agenda, I have the Finance Committee and Hazin. Are you going to present the two resolutions?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. On behalf of Finance Committee, I'll be requesting for your approval two resolutions. The first resolution is to authorize CHFA to issue up to 500 million of housing mortgage finance program bonds. The sale will allow CHFA to raise 100 million of lendable proceeds for its first-time homebuyer program, take advantage of the current low interest rate environment by refunding about 200 million of outstanding single-family and multifamily bonds, and reduce its exposure to LIBOR by refunding about 200 million of outstanding index bonds. This sale will be consummated over 3 tranches, one in September and 2 in October. The resolution was presented to Finance Committee, and the committee asked a few questions on LIBOR index refunding bonds and whether such refunding will remain as variable rate, and the selection and the role of the book runner for the upcoming sales. The resolution was approved unanimously by committee. I'll be happy to answer any question the board may have at this time.
Thank you, Hazin. Questions for Hazin?
I have one. It's Heidi. Just a quick one. Hazim, why wait till October for the third tranche or the third one, as rates seem to be going up?
The last transaction is for multifamily. So for multifamily, we have provided instruction for projects that would like to participate and be part of that transaction to close by September, so that we can then include them in the transaction. So because of our nature of pursuing a pool financing.
Okay. I see rates ticking up. So, as soon as we can, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's always been our goal. But the challenge is, as you are aware, when we are dealing with multifamily, we like to approach the pool concept so that we can have economies of scale, we can reduce the cost of issuance.
You got it.
So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other question? May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move.
Have a second.
Second.
Shelley, could you call the roll?
Gary Abrahams,
Aye.
Cindy Betts,
Aye.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWinger,
Aye.
Kylie Gosselin,
Aye.
Tim Hodges,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Stella Mascaro Bruno,
Yes.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Glenn Thames,
Aye.
unanimous.
Motion carries. Hazin, the second resolution.
The second resolution is to authorize CHFA to procure another credit facility to help manage its interest expense and preserve volume cap and tax exempt authority. Last March, the board approved CHFA to enter into a credit facility with a not to exceed amount of 75 million. CHFA entered into an agreement with US Bank, and it allows CHFA to borrow at a very low rate. The current borrowing rate is less than half of 1% or 50 basis points. The new request, if approved, will allow CHFA to procure one or more additional facilities with an aggregate amount of not to exceed 100 million and a term not exceeding 3 years. The resolution was presented to Finance Committee, and the committee asked many questions around index used for the credit facility, concern about LIBOR, understanding about the borrowing and the intent, such forth, the relationship between the approval in March and the ask for the month of July, the cost of any unused facility, and soliciting interest from local bank. The resolution was approved unanimously by committee, and I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have at this time.
Thank you, Hazin. May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move.
You have a second?
This is Kylie. I'll second.
Questions?
I have a question, sorry. So just what's the fee for this? And aren't we trying to move away from LIBOR because there's the push about something more universal, or so aren't we moving away from that as a funding parameter or index?
Yes, so both questions, Heidi, were asked during the committee discussion. On the first one, the commitment fee is only 20 basis points for the unused.
Per year?
Yeah, per year, correct.
Thank you.
And the rate, if we do draw down the line, it is going to be based on LIBOR plus a particular spread. Now, the responses that we did receive from the authorization from March, they did indicate if they were to offer us LIBOR, it will only until June of 2023, because that's when LIBOR sunsets for the 1 month LIBOR. We did ask them to provide us with alternate index such as SOFR, federal funds rate. So that's all part of the analysis. Regarding the exposure to LIBOR, the intent of this credit facility is only to park, in quotes, our prepayment before we turn it around and convert it into long-term financing. It's never been intended to provide a long-term borrowing. So essentially what it means is, yes, we do have exposure from LIBOR, but is within this period where we're just trying to manage our liquidity and the funding from now until the next financing, which is anticipated sometime around spring of 2022.
So I'm assuming there's a cleanup provision, so the usage could never usually go past 1 year or 11
Correct.
Months or something.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? Shelley, could you do the call?
Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Cindy Betts,
Aye.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWinker,
Aye.
Holly Goslin,
Yes.
Kim Hodges,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Salem Mascaro Bruno,
Yes.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders.
Aye.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Yes.
Glenn Thames,
Aye.
unanimous.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Hazin, you are on for the next resolution.
Hey, thank you. I'm very famous today. So the following resolution pertains to a request to amend the MOU with the Department of Housing in connection with the Housing and Community Development Leader Institute. Last January, the board authorized CHFA to invest $100,000 in a 2-year leadership program spearheaded by DOH and designed by the Hamden Economic Development Corporation. Earlier this month, the corporation would like to transfer its contract to Liz and sought CHFA's consent. After conferring with DOH, we are recommending to the board to approve the amendment and the appointment of Liz as a successor to the contract. I'll be happy to answer any question the board may have at this time.
Can I have a motion to approve the resolution presented by Hazin?
Kylie,
I'll
so
move.
moved.
Kylie move and Jerry seconded?
Sure.
Okay. I didn't know who's the seconded. Any questions or comments? Shelley?
Abrahams,
Aye.
Cindy Betts,
Aye.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Very interested in
Heidi DeLinger,
Aye.
Kylie Goslin,
Yes.
Tim Hodges,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Kayla Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders.
Aye.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Yes.
Glenn Thames,
Yes.
unanimous.
Motion carries. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hazin. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the resolution adopting the low-income housing tax credit 2022 and 2023 qualified allocation plan. We put this item on the table at the last meeting. So I would like to have a motion to take from the table and to pass the resolution adopting the low-income housing tax credit 2022-2023 qualified allocation plan.
Move it, this is Heidi.
Second, Kathy.
Any questions or comments?
Yes, I have a comment. I think all of you received a letter from Treasurer Wooden this morning that was sent to the board expressing his overall support for the policy amendments of the QAP, but also his view that further discussion is needed on specifically of this matter, the impact of the proposed changes in the opportunity map for scoring projects in different communities. There seems to be a need for additional discussion on that. Given that you're bringing this for a vote today, I will be voting no on behalf of Treasurer Wooden.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other comments?
Yeah, it's
Hey,
Tim
I
Hodges.
have my hand up.
I cannot see your hand. Here you go, George.
I didn't want to interrupt because I finally figured out my new laptop where the hand is. I did read the letter from the treasurer's office, and I have the utmost respect for the treasurer. So one of the point he makes is he felt that there was not enough opportunities for the public to get input and to be, made aware of the changes. I know earlier this morning we heard from, I think was the Connecticut, I forget which one of the two that testify in favor mentioned that there were several opportunities for people to come and hear about it and so forth. So can staff expand on that a little bit?
Yes.
Because I think
Terry?
it's important that if there's a misunderstanding, that we clarify.
Yeah, no, it is important. Thank you for bringing it up. I have asked Terry to give a summary of all the outreach activities that have been done so far. So Terry Nash, could you please go over?
Absolutely. Good morning.
Second, if you don't mind, because I think what the treasurer's real concern was, we did have a call yesterday with the commissioner, Kayla Mascara Bruno and Nandini, and we wanted to better understand these two maps. And it seemed like there wasn't anything prepared to show us the old map versus the new map. We couldn't there wasn't access to the old map, and there didn't seem, we were surprised there wasn't anything prepared to explain to us the difference between the old map and the new map. We were pretty surprised by that it hadn't been prepared for one of those other hearings. I mean, Terry's welcome to go through. We do know there's a long public comment process, but this whole thing about the two maps, we don't feel there was anything that could be shared with us anyway that had been prepared to really explain the differences and the impacts.
Thank you, Sarah. Go ahead, Terry.
Okay. I am happy to reiterate the outreach that we've done over the past year and a half. There was an unprecedented level of engagement with the community, starting in the spring of 2020 when the state opportunity map was completed, and then communicated through website notices and e-blast through the spring and the fall of 2020. We held a tipping point session, which was mentioned earlier, and listening sessions and roundtables with various stakeholders. The tipping point session, which we sponsored, was specifically intended to have an opportunity for developers and potential applicants to learn about the mapping tool, how to use it, how it was created, what the underlying assumptions were, and how it might impact their future work. That continued with an input period in the fall and a training provided online in the form of an ongoing webinar that folks could access at any time so that they could put in their address, learn what the index would be for the potential address they were proposing and how that might impact a predicted score. The public input period was 30 days, and then we had a series of roundtables and continuing feedback solicited through the winter and spring, when we concluded with a developer engagement profile process, during which applicants are invited to present potential applications. Future funding is identified that might be appropriate, because as you probably are all well aware, the 9% LIHTC is a tiny fraction of the total state resources available for multifamily housing, and it's not always the most applicable to every given development. So throughout the year, 18 months or so, there were numerous mechanisms of outreach and engagement that we employed to try to educate folks on the mapping tool and how it could best serve their particular needs and the needs of the communities they're working in.
Thank you, Terry. Any other comments or question?
Yes, Shayla, it's
Go ahead, Tim.
Tim
Who's that?
Hodges.
Tim?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I commented last month, so I feel I should comment again. Look, a few things, right? I think the staff has done at least what we asked, which was to go and make sure we communicated with the legislators to get feedback from them, and I think that was important. So I will be voting in favor of this, although somewhat reluctantly. It's not lost on me that we had 10 legislators which signed a letter last month, and then that number I think was 14 in the last letter. So, and I'm a little disappointed, but not necessarily in chaff. I'm a little disappointed that there was not some resolution to this. And as I've said before, if I were governor and this got to my desk and then I got a letter from 14 legislators, I know what I would do. But fortunately for chaff, and probably more fortunately for the state, I'm not governor, so you don't have to worry about that. What I would say though is my second point is that there is, what I recommend is that we look at the process, right? And I know that the staff did a tremendous job in terms of outreach, but I will say that during our process in terms of the QAP task force, there wasn't a lot of interaction with people outside of our group. And so as an example, you get 15 minutes to kind of make your comments, right? And we should think a little harder about being able to allow and for us to be able to engage the public more. So as an example, while we got the 100+ letters or whatever it was, the fact is that we probably read through a lot of those, but we also rely on the summary. And while you can write things in a letter, it's a lot easier and you can understand and have back and forth when you actually have a conversation. So it's my strong recommendation as we kind of move forward that we look at that process, particularly for the QAP task force, so that we can better understand the concerns and where people are coming from. But I will today be voting in favor of this.
Thank you, Tim. Lisa?
Thank you. Yeah, and Tim, thank you for your comments. I want to second the fact that we know that the staff led by Terry do a terrific job. We know that this is hard, and we know that the process and the requirements of the process introduce certain constraints on the way this moves. But I will say for my own part that I felt like we got some very important feedback in addition to what we heard later in the game from Eastern Connecticut. We did in the letters see some really significant comments that gave me pause in that in making these substantial changes, it's hard to know exactly what the impact is until you run the actual scoring rubric on projects. There were some very credible letters, I thought, that suggested that the way the scoring shifted had potentially created a bigger impact in a new direction than we believed we were actually creating. And that gave me pause. I just want to be very honest about that. The Eastern Connecticut objections are additional to what we heard in some of those letters. And I'd just like to suggest, I don't think that there is anything wrong with the board saying, let's just take a step back, understanding that timing is important on this. But I do believe it is within our purview to say, we've heard a lot of comments on this, and maybe we should take a step back and think a little harder about this before we finalize. And I understand that's not an easy thing to do, but in the time that I've been on the board and working on the QAP, this is the most concern that I have seen raised about it. So I just want to put that idea forward to the board, which may or may not have support. For my part, I'll abstain if this is going to come to a vote today, but I do think we still have an opportunity to take a step back and think about what we're hearing from the comments and to consider whether some type of modification might be called for.
Thank you, Lisa. Kylie?
Thanks all. Just some quick comments that I prepared just so that I could be clear. They're very short, that touch on some of the things that have been said today, as well as what's been shared in public comment. On the process side, I just want to remind us all that this is a quasi-public agency, and we're intended to be honest and dutiful stewards of state and federal resources, apart and away from the influences of politics or developers or individual project finances. And while there's a clearly defined and publicly communicated process for public input, including the public hearing in which folks were welcome to come share by voice as well as submit in writing, as designated by law, I feel the influence outside of that process should give us concern and pause. And then finally, I'll just note on that this process has a built-in review period every other year now to allow for additional or new input or concern. So I'd encourage you all to consider that we went through the legal appropriate process. There was additional outreach, as Terry mentioned, and this will be re-reviewed again every other year. So if there are concerns that come up, or if we do, to Lisa's point, run projects and see a strange disproportionate impact in any particular area, we have the opportunity to discuss that again. And then on the actual substance of the issue here, I just remind you all that the purpose of LIHTC is to put an affordable roof over the heads of low and moderate income human beings in a place that gives them the best opportunity to improve their economic stability and well-being, not to bestow economic benefits to a particular town or census tract. Those benefits, if they occur, are in any financial or political benefits that come from any of these very few, again, investments, are secondary and should not be a determining factor of where people are housed. And I will stop there.
Thank you, Kylie. George, do you have your hand up or that was from before?
No, I raised it again.
Oh.
I was not gonna speak again, but I do, even though I agree with what Kylie overall was saying, I do want to go on the record that I at least appreciate input from everybody, including elected officials and developers and so forth. And I at least personally find that to be helpful. I understand that everybody in some way is a lobbyist, it's a special interest. So if we're gonna use that test measurement, then nobody's testimony should matter because they all are trying to influence us from a specific point of view. And I'm going to be voting yes. And I think staff did a great job. And
Right now.
and when you hear things like, Matt was not sure with me, well, I think different groups have different burden that they have to pass, and have different set of skills that if you want something in your government agency, you can ask for it too, right? Because we cannot read people's mind. But having said that, I do value the input we get from every type of group, including elected officials and developers. And I just want to go on the record saying that.
Thank
Even
you.
though I may not agree in this instance with some of those comments, I do value it.
Thank you. Kylie, your hand is up again or is from before?
I just want to comment, Andrew. I agree that it's important to have developer input and legislator input and public input. My concern was saying that it's important that we not weigh one or other more than another. And again, citing the process issue and where that input properly belongs.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, Chairwoman, if I may, I just have a clarifying question. So this is for the next 2 years. And so in 23, we will go through this process again. Is there a mid-year, is there like a midpoint review that we could possibly entertain to, understand how this is impacting prior to kind of 23? Is that possible to put that in part of the process?
Terry?
Yes, we do look at each application round and review how the applicants came in, if there was any undue hardship, if there was any experience we can learn from and improve upon. We do that with every round. So we will definitely be doing that after, at the mid-year point, in between.
Okay, that's just important information, for the board, I think, to have as we, again, things have shifted. So I think it's very important for us to be diligent in monitoring how this new impact is having unintended consequences on potential developments. So then we can, course correct and inform how we move forward. And so that being the case and that process being inputted, I will vote in favor of it.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Any other comments before we take a vote? And before we take a vote, I just want to say thank you to the staff. They did a lot of effort for the outreach. And many of the board members, some of the board members that were on the task force, thank you very much for all your time. It was an intense process. And I can say that because I was part of those processes. Many committees, groups from different areas that we met with. And I think that at this point, there are some changes. They affirmatively furthering for housing. And that is a policy decision that we have made so that we can comply and try to be more equitable with all our citizens. So having said that, Shelley, could you please call the roll?
Gary Abrahams,
Aye.
Cindy Butts,
Aye.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWinger,
Aye.
Kylie Goslin,
Yes.
Tim Hodges,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Salem Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders,
I think she was abstaining. Or no, I think she said no.
Okay, I'm a no.
Yeah,
No.
she's a no.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Abstain?
Glenn Thames.
Yes.
We have one opposed and one abstention.
So motion carries.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. The last item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move.
Allowed enough of my time.
Second, George.
Questions? Shelley, could you call the roll?
Gary Abrahams,
Aye.
Cindy Butts,
Aye.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Heidi DeWinger,
Aye.
Kylie Goslin,
Aye.
Tim Hodges,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Kayla Mascaro Bruno,
Yes.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Aye.
Glenn Thames,
Aye.
unanimous.
Motion carries. Thank you, Shelley. Before we adjourn, I just wanted to mention that I know we talk about, or I talk about maybe having a hybrid meeting in person. I have heard from a couple of our members, and due to the Delta variants, maybe we'll just postpone. We'll see how we do through the summer and the fall. But the next board meeting in September will be through Zoom, unless anybody else. I mean, I would like to hear from you guys too. What do you think?
I'd be perfectly willing to attend a meeting in person.
I would too. Heidi.
Fine with that.
Me too.
Same.
Also,
There you go.
but maybe we have one in September in person. But we will let you know. It will be a combination. If staff will try to make sure that we have technology to have a hybrid meeting. A motion to adjourn, or any comments before we adjourn from anybody, or we can adjourn and somebody can make a motion.
Right, how do we communicate our approval of the QAP as presented? How does everyone get knowledge of that?
We'll do a press release.
Okay. Should be interesting.
Thank you. Any other questions? So can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move. This is George.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All
Second.
those in favor say aye.
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 All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great summer.
Yeah.